Hello and welcome to Leading Sales, the only interview-based podcast where we discuss the challenges and experiences of two of the most critical disciplines in business today, leadership and sales. Our podcast brings together industry experts, thought leaders, and authors to share insights, strategies, and real-life stories to inspire and educate our listeners on the art, science, and the dynamics of leadership and sales. And now, your host, George Gallas Sr.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Leading Sales, the podcast where we explore the art and science of leadership and sales, and the mindset behind meaningful success. Our special guest today is Clark Grue, someone whose career truly spans continents, industries, and ideas. Clark is the co-founder, president, and chief commercial officer of Clear Sky Global, a modern energy company transforming the way we think about low-carbon fuel and sustainable business. From founding the British Trade Office in Calgary, Canada, to leading various organizations in tourism, energy, and economic development, Clark's inspirational story is one of connecting vision, innovation, and global collaboration. Welcome to the program, Clark.
Thanks so much, George. Great to be with you.
Excellent. It's a pleasure for me to have you on my show. So tell us, where are you joining us from today?
I'm in Calgary, Canada. If those of you that don't know Canada that well, it's on the western side of the country, just up against the Rocky Mountains.
The beautiful Rocky Mountains. I remember the days and years that I lived there. It was actually like 15 or 17 years total. And a great time. I got to get used to the cold and the snow and shoveling the snow and loving it, and then later hating it. But I love being a Canadian citizen myself, and very proud of it. So thank you, Clark, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on my show. So I was doing the math in my head, and I think we met probably in the early 2000s, right? I remember living in Calgary, working in the southwest part of the city. You're having your office downtown, and I think you and I met in one of these meetings with the Canadian Council of the Americas at the time. I know I was volunteering for them and you were speaking, or you were also volunteering for them, and that's how you and I met, right?
Yeah, I think that's right, George. The Calgary is such a networked community that, there's so many different groups and different ways to connect, but I think that's right. I think that's where we started our friendship and our relationship, and then it kind of grew as our careers grew, here in Calgary, and then for you beyond into the United States. So yeah, I think that's about right timing.
I remember you always being passionate about international trade, international business, collaboration. You invited me many times to collaborate in international trade between Houston and Alberta. Can you tell the audience a little bit about your beginnings? Where does Clark Grue come from? How did you get involved into this type of work?
Sure. And, my passion for international business, George, goes back primarily to my first real significant role here in Calgary, which was to establish and run the British government's office here in Alberta for Her Majesty's government. So I worked for the British government, and my job was to connect British companies to what was happening in Western Canada and across Canada in the energy space. So then to get to know sort of the businesses and how they interact and how they actually could do business across an ocean really was what gave me a passion for international business, international trade that transcends not just, the transactional side, but the people side as well. So ever since, I've been in international business. So it's been a while.
It's been a while, and it's been a nice ride, I'm sure. And as you know, I've dedicated my career to international business as well, both selling, marketing, and running projects.
Yeah.
And I remember at the beginning, you always talk about the commonalities and the differences, the cultural differences between doing business in Canada versus doing business in the US or in the UK or in Latin America. I remember in our chapter, we were focused a lot on Latin American business. And what would you say are the main differences between the way we run business in Canada versus other parts of the world that you've been involved with?
Yeah, it's a great question because, at the core of it, I think, George, you know, business is really just an extension of us as people. Like when we're out doing business around the world, the primary thing is building trust. Like will somebody in another country, whether it's Africa or Latin America or just down the street, actually connect with me and want to do business? And because of course we know that without trust in business, it just doesn't work. Like you don't end up doing any business without that. So, there's a lot of elements to it, a lot of tactical elements to it. I always found it fascinating. And what was fascinating to me is here in North America, we typically like to work through a lot of the details of a contract before we sign a contract, because we know that once we've signed a contract, what's written in there is what we base the agreement on tactically and legally. Well, in China, they'll sign an agreement right away, and then they'll work out the details after. There's so many ways people like to do business. Like the Saudis like to do contracts at midnight because it's so hot there, you know, all day long. You can't do business until you can sit around and actually have a conversation. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned trust. I say funny because in one of my previous episodes, I was interviewing another person from Calgary. His name is Michael Vickers, and I'm sure you know him. Great author, great speaker. And we were talking about how trust is at the very foundation of every relationship. And without it, it's pretty difficult to build and deliver value. So you've done a number of things, and I remember as we were speaking at the beginning about your first ventures, you started this company called Rainmaker. Would you say that this was precisely an answer to that question or that need of how to do business across boundaries, across oceans?
Yeah, that's exactly where it started, George. And the concept of Rainmaker came to me when I was working for the British government. I was connecting companies to Canada at that time, and I was sitting in Glasgow actually speaking to a pump manufacturer who I told about all the opportunities in Canada and in Alberta. And he got really excited. Like, this is great. This is an opportunity for him to grow his business and expand. And he said, okay, what do I have to do? Oh, you're going to have to get an office. You're going to have to find someone to represent you there. A good salesperson that can get around into the market. And it's going to cost you for that person. It's going to cost you some expenses, et cetera. So I painted the picture for him. And his response was, great, where do I sign up? I said, well, it doesn't really, you can't just sign up. There's not a service that exists that you sign up. You got to do this work. And he said, that's too much work, and never came over. So it struck me that there was a service that could sit between what government is doing to promote and the actual tactical side of moving into a market, gaining the trust we talked about, and actually building a business off of that. So that was what birthed Rainmaker. So we started Rainmaker in 2007, 1 month before the iPhone came out. So we started it in the dark ages, so to speak, when you didn't have everything at your fingertips like you do now. And it grew over the years. We had offices around the world, and it was a fantastic experience and a learning for me because we got to deal with so many cool companies who were trying to move into different markets around the world.
Yeah, and in reality, when a company is trying to enter a new market, there's so many unanswered questions, there's so many barriers, there's so many unknowns, and so many assumptions. And that, I think, is the most dangerous part of it. So many assumptions that, when not taken into consideration and dealt with in the right way, they can become a big disaster at the end of the day. So you guys came in to fill that gap between government promotion for trade, which is beautiful, but then you need to implement it. You need to allow the companies to actually make it happen without tripping over each other, without making mistakes. And you needed that entity to facilitate that whole journey. Now, Todd, you and I are sitting on a bunch of oil. and I'm not joking. You live in Calgary, I live in Houston now. I say we're sitting on a bunch of oil because both cities are oil rich. And we we spent those years in the late 90s, early 2000s enjoying the benefit of oil-rich states or provinces. But then the world started changing, and we needed to take care of our planet, and we needed to take care of our ecosystems, and we needed to come up with answers to how to build a future with cleaner energy. And then I want you to share with our audience how Clear Sky comes to existence, what triggers the beginning of Clear Sky Global, and tell us, what is it that you guys do now?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, George. And I think, we all experienced that ride, if you will, as the world became really addicted to energy. Like, we just consume so much oil around the world. I think we're at 105 million barrels a day now, or something like that, right? So there's an interesting challenge for the world in that we have a thirst for what oil gives us, but we have to be responsible about how we produce oil. We have to be responsible about how we consume oil. And we know that because regardless of where we stand on the emissions discussion and climate change, almost everybody I talk to believes that we at least have a responsibility to look after the earth on which we live for our children and for our grandchildren. So that's the premise upon which Clear Sky began. So we began to look for technologies. So Clear Sky started in the very beginning, January 2022. And it was built on a technology that Rainmaker had found in Germany. But the rigor with which we put the technology through, my business partner, Timothy Cosmic, and myself, was such that we wanted to make sure whatever technology we were actually going to bring to the market was economic and actually viable and responsible. And so we birthed Clear Sky out of Rainmaker, really to be a company that would deliver, not just sell technology, but deliver technology into the marketplace that were those three things: economic, viable, and responsible. So it was a fascinating journey to find the two technologies that we have now, which we believe do all that, because at the end of the day, to use our technologies, it will not cost the consumer more money, but if they use our technology, they'll reduce their emissions between 25 and 40%. So these are the things we're looking for. So that's kind of where our story started, George, into the Clear Sky world.
Sounds good. I noticed that since you and I met, you have led both public, private, and also volunteer-based organizations. And the question I want to ask you, and I'm sure the answer will help our audience, is how do you have to adjust your leadership repertoire, if you will, to lead those who collaborate with you, either in a government public office or in a volunteer-based organization or in a private business like the one you are in right now?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, George. And I consider myself a lifelong learner. I'm 59 years old, and I'm still learning every day how to lead better, how to be a better teammate, all these things, right? Because I think we should learn until we're not here anymore. And so what's been fascinating for me over the years has been an idea that I think I talked to you about many years ago. I talked with you about a book I was considering writing at the time, and who knows, it's still rattling around in my brain, which is all about everybody's currency. And what I mean by that is that everybody has a currency. Everybody has something that they're passionate about, that they trade with, they want to talk about, they want to discuss things about. So when it comes to leadership, for me, and what what I've learned through that process, I guess, of being in very different organizations, it's leading people in a way where they can align their passions with what we're doing together. And that's not, it's maybe easy to say, and maybe it sounds a little trite, but at the end of the day, when you're leading a team, if they're not on board with where you're going or what you're trying to achieve together as a group, you're going to get maybe 50% effort, right? You're not going to get the effort that you really want. So what I've found, there's so many different types of people with different passions. And the interesting thing about leading a diverse group like that, is that they all have their own currency. They have something they're passionate about, their family or their faith in many cases, or their, how proud they are of how they do their job. And so finding those things to build within each person has always been, for me, something that I've tried to do. Now, never been perfect at it, but that sort of approach, I think, and trying to identify, get to know the people on the team and see where they're going with being on the team helps you be the captain of the team, because you then can leverage that and inspire through that. So that's kind of, I think, one of the biggest things for me, George, is aligning the purpose of the organization with the individuals.
And do you feel that compensation versus motivation have different effects on people's commitment to the team and to the organization at large? Do you think that, because in the private sector, obviously financial monetary compensation has a pivotal role in motivating people, as well as in a government public entity. But what about volunteering organizations? And when you have to incentivize, you have to motivate, you have to inspire people to roll up the sleeves and to get the stuff done in the absence of monetary compensation. So can you talk to our listeners a little bit about it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, George. It's a different challenge. One of the things I volunteer with is an organization called Celebrate Canada Worldwide. And what Celebrate Canada Worldwide does is it actually produces events in different parts of the world that basically celebrate and promote who Canada is as a country, their sports, their culture, their music. Well, we have produced Canada Day in London, England, on Trafalgar Square for the last 3 years. Well, this is all volunteers, right? People giving their time, giving their effort to basically put on a festival that with a enormously large budget and no ticket sales. So you have, it costs about over £300,000 to put on that event. And the only money coming in is, selling poutine and things like that, and on the square and sponsors. So you have a lot of people that volunteer because of their passion. Again, the passion for the cause. So the cause in that case is raising the Canadian flag in London, England. Well, inspiring people to do that work, that good work, it can be challenging. I mean, the thing is, though, at the end of the day, they're there for a reason.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about inspiring and motivating people, volunteer people. Simon Sinek describes defining your why. What a better way to inspire people, to motivate people to work hard, to do whatever it takes to achieve the common goal, than to finding the reason why I'm doing it and embracing that notion of passion. And yes, finding the why, as Simon Sinek would say, is the best way to inspire people to embrace the vision, the goal, and to get things done.
Totally. Absolutely, George. And I, Apple's a great example. I mean, not everybody loved Steve Jobs and could understand him, but they got addicted to the vision, which was a tremendous vision and a tremendous undertaking. And look what Apple's done, right? And so when you have volunteers, you're trying to create that same passion, of course. But at the same time, as leaders, I think sometimes we kind of try too hard to make things happen a certain way. It's always surprised me what people are capable of if you let them go, if you let them, be creative and do their thing and evolve within a particular framework, mandate, or vision. People are incredibly creative and they come up with great solutions on their own. And just empowering that. Sometimes it's tough for leaders because you think, well, I've got a vision, it has to be this way. Sometimes it doesn't work out the way that you originally thought, So I think as leaders, we have to also be ready to be flexible on where the inertia of the project will actually go.
Yeah, and I think there's nothing more rewarding than working with a team of people, having a vision, having a goal, coming up with a plan, the tasks, delegating them and letting go and trusting that they can use, as you said, their own creativity, their own tools, guide them, be there to support them, but don't get in the way. So can you talk, I'm sure you've met your own quote of micromanagers out there. Can you talk about the difference and the good and the bad and the ugly of micro versus macro management?
Yeah. I'm a startup guy. So, been involved in lots of startups. And the thing about startups is when you do start something up, whatever it is, whether it's a project initiative or it's a company or a non-for-profit, whatever, at the beginning, you end up obviously doing everything. You might be with 2 or 3 others, but you're doing everything. So the challenge, I think, for, call it entrepreneurial leaders, is to get to a point where I've I created this idea. I built this whole thing out. And now suddenly these people are taking it and running with it a direction that I wasn't thinking it was going to go. That's tough. That's tough for an entrepreneurial leader to accept sometimes. And I think we have to learn as leaders that as much as we can be the originator of the idea or the founder of the idea, if we hold on to it too tight, we'll just choke it.
I couldn't agree more. That's for sure. You're absolutely right. Now, going back to Clear Sky Global, and your predecessor organizations, you've always, in my mind, you've always trying to sell intangibles. You've always trying to sell ideas. You've always tried to sell solutions to a problem, being Rainmaker, being now with the clean energy technology. There's a bit of education that needs to happen when you're selling something so innovative. You need to explain it. You need to convince others that there's something behind the PowerPoint. There's something that of value that can bring solutions that can help us build a better world, and that there's value in it. So can you talk about the selling of your idea, the selling of your technology, and go back also in previous years? How did you adjust your repertoire when it came to selling the intangible?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, George, because when we started Rainmaker, we were starting a consultancy practice. Well, what are we selling? We're selling our know-how, our relationships, our global reach, things like that are extremely intangible, right? And selling ideas is not easy, and I think it's something that people don't know they need what you're selling. You've got to bring them a long way before they realize that you can help them. So it's trying to identify where the company's pain points are so you can offer something that could help solve that pain point. And trust is not a either have it or not. Trust is, I think, more like a bit of a meter or a scale, right? Where trust is built over time. If you're selling into a corporation, a large corporation or a mid-size, that person inside the corporation has a reputation, and they have to maintain their reputation within their world. So it's really important that whatever you're bringing to the table for them is helping them solve a real problem for the corporation, and not one that you've made up in your head, because we all do that. It's like, oh, they must need us because they have this problem. Well, then you dig in and find out they don't have that problem. So like for us with Clear Sky, we have a product that does take a long time to sell in to a company. It's very simple. It drops into fuel and it saves you 10% on your fuel, and it seems very mathematically, it seems like a no-brainer for anybody. But at the end of the day, there are many barriers inside of each company that you have to take the time to go through them and to answer the questions, to resolve them as best you can before they'll start to adopt your solution. The thing I really liked about this product is that once it is in with a company, it's a repeat sale. And I always love those, right, George? We always love those where, okay, they're going to have to keep coming back and buying more because they're going to get hooked on it. And that's what I like about this. If you consume the fuel, well, you need more to put in the next batch of fuel. So that gives you, I think, a perspective on how much time it's worth to invest in a trust relationship with a company, because they could become a 10-year customer. Whereas in some cases, if you're selling something that's a one-off, you got to try to build trust really quick, make the sale and move on. So two very different scenarios, of course, but I think the intangible to the tangible, I would encourage any salesperson who hasn't tried to sell things that are intangible to try it, whatever it is. Try selling ideas, because I think it sharpens us when we're selling actual products, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense. And actually, you reminded me of my early days. I was probably 18 years old back home in Chile. And to help fund my way through college, I found myself selling books. I was carrying a little cart loaded with encyclopedias. Yes, kids, before the internet, there were such things as knowledge in books, encyclopedias, and English courses. It was a book, pages, and also cassette tapes. Google what a cassette tape is. And I tried many times, I'd knock on so many doors trying to sell books. I was selling encyclopedias and then I selling English courses. And I was told no so many times because I was trying to sell the tangible when in reality, I was selling the intangible behind the book. I started experimenting. Every door that opened, I tried a different pitch until one worked. And then I repeated it and I improved it and I made it better and better. And I started selling and selling and then I killed it. And it was very simple. I started selling the future to the family. I looked at a young kid in the living room watching TV and I said, you see that kid? With this product, your kid not only will go to college, your kid will be bilingual. Your kid can go to the United States and get an education. So it's amazing how a simple book product became a promise for the future, for a better future, and the product started selling. So tell me more about the technology. We've been talking about the past, the days when you and I met and all of that, but you have those bottles. The audience cannot see them, but I see two bottles behind you, a yellow and a clear liquid.
Yeah.
Tell us about the fuel behind Clear Sky.
So what was so as I said, we found one technology in Germany in 2021, which is an actual physical plant that converts natural gas into low carbon diesel and jet fuel, which we thought that's brilliant with no emissions in the middle. Perfect. So we are currently building those plants in Germany to bring them into Canada in 2027. So that's great. That was first technology. And we liked it because we could sell the fuel that comes off of those units, George, is lighter and higher in calorific value. So it's beneficial to the aviation industry, to the transportation industry, et cetera. And we can sell it at the same price as refined fuels. So they can use our product, same price, and get the benefit of the product, including emission reduction, at the same price. So that was technology one. Technology two is the fluid that we simply mix into fuel at a 1 to 2,000 ratio. So it takes very little of it. And that fuel now is affected by the product in such a way that it emulsifies and it burns more completely. So when a fuel burns more completely, you get more energy out of it and you get less emissions and less particulates out the back end. Brilliant solution. So here you have something that just costs you a few pennies to put into your tank. You save about 10 to 15% on your fuel bill. Plus, you're not putting out the emissions that you were putting out before. So that's where Clear Sky started. And we thought, my business partner, Timothy, was actually happily retired, traveling around the world, diving in different beaches and so on. He had made his money in oil and gas. And then he saw the German technology and he basically came back out of retirement because he got so passionate about, we need to get these GTL plants into cities across North America and into the rest of the world. And we need everybody using this treatment because of the benefits of it. So that's what started us off, George. And the technologies are remarkable. We're thrilled with our technology partners in Europe and working with them to bring it to the world.
That sounds amazing. So for those in the audience that are not in this industry, GTL refers to gas to liquids, right? And so Clark, that technology, the GTL conversion plants do not exist in Canada at the moment?
No, they don't, George. So for many reasons that we found this in Germany and it had been used in different ways for many years. But the challenge in Germany is that, or in Europe for that matter, is you're not allowed to use natural gas to create fuel. It has to be used to produce power. That's just because they're constrained with their natural gas supplies, as we know. So the technology was sitting there and they hadn't really even considered the concept of natural gas as a feedstock because it wasn't viable in Germany to do that. So when we came along and talked to them and our good German partners, who are very deep thinkers and very smart engineers and physicists, when we started to talk about North America and the pricing of natural gas versus the cost of liquid fuels, it became clear very quickly that there's a massive opportunity here from an economic perspective. So these are very economic, these plants. But at the same time, the solution we'd be bringing to the marketplace would be one that can reduce emissions by 30, 40%. So the opportunity for us to combine that messaging into the market here in North America was enormous. And so basically, yes, with most of your fuel that you buy today, 99% of it comes from refined oil. Okay, so we take crude oil, we refine it at a refinery, lots of process involved in that, and there's a lot of emissions and all that, to give us the fuel we need to move around our towns, our cities, our countries. So if we can instead of using oil, we take natural gas as a feedstock. And then what we do with the natural gas is we don't burn it. So we basically just separate it and create a syngas and produce the fuels. So we have no emissions as we make the fuel, if that makes sense. So we're cutting out tremendous amount of emissions from a refinery, and the fuel itself is cleaner. So as it burns cleaner. So it really is a tremendous solution. And then they're very small compared to a refinery. These are like 40,000 square feet, so 4,000 square meters, not very large. And so we can put them wherever there's natural gas. We can put a plant and produce low carbon alternative diesel, low carbon alternative jet fuel, pharmaceutical grade water, and extra power. So they self-power and they produce enough power for roughly 300 homes perpetually. So it's a tremendous technology. So anyway, not to get too technical, but basically for people who aren't in the industry, it's basically changing from producing fuel from oil to producing fuel from gas, natural gas.
Yes, and at the end of the day, the GTL technology has been around for a while. So it's not necessarily brand new, it's not cutting edge, it's just rethinking, reusing what we've invented many years ago and applying it to make today's energy problem better. So Clark, let me take you now on a more personal journey. You've built trade offices, you led convention centers, you've chaired national, domestic, and international organizations of different sorts, and now you're leading this modern energy technology company. When you look back, Clark, what's been the most rewarding leadership moment that you have experienced? And you can take a moment to think about it, but in your head, going back in time, across all of these experiences and career shifts that you've had, what do you think has been the most rewarding leadership moment you've had so far?
Yeah. Wow, George. I mean, well, it's tough because there's been achievements, certainly, all the way through our careers. We look back and we see, like different achievements that are really meaningful in the moment, and they're really critical to where we're at the time. And those are important because you build on those. You get rewarded for them or you get recognized for them, and it's fantastic. I mean, a number of organizations I've started really from scratch, like the Association for Corporate Growth in Calgary here, way back when. That was well many years ago, 20 plus years ago. Starting the British Trade Office. It was the first of its kind in the world when we started the British government's office here in Alberta. They had never done it before. I didn't realize that I was under a microscope from London for the first 2 years, but apparently I was. But I was very proud of the British Trade Office, what we built there, and now it's a full consulate and continues on to this day. I'm very proud of that. And then the fact that we could build Rainmaker, Timothy and I, and my other business partner, Lois Mitchell, the fact that we could build Rainmaker like we did back in 2007 to today, I'm very proud of what we've achieved there. And then, of course, the Canada Day events, like the fact that we were able to help save those events and make them happen, I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to attract the World Petroleum Congress to Calgary while I was in charge of the business events group in Calgary here in 2018, 19. Very proud of chairing Meetings Mean Business Canada through COVID when that industry was absolutely decimated. Nobody was traveling anywhere. There was no conferences happening. And I was the one basically in front of Parliament virtually here in Canada saying, listen, you have to support the hundreds of thousands of people that work in this industry and are negatively affected right now. And we were able to get some support for them. So, things like that, George, make me very proud. But I guess I look at it and go, what are you proud of? Like, what makes you proud of those things? They're sort of, milestones or even tombstones in my history, so to speak. But I think the biggest thing for me in all of it is building something that actually came to fruition or lasted or made a longer impact, right? And I think the thing that, for me anyway, that's been interesting as I look back, and maybe as the older I get, it's those things that impacted people for a longer period of time. I had coffee with one of the ladies that worked for me at the convention center when I was there years ago now. I left there in 2020. So But I had coffee with her, and she made a couple comments of things that I had started when I was there that were still happening and still growing and still, achieving results. And then another one of my leaders from that time sent me a note this morning, and Calgary hosted the International Rotary Convention this year. And Dave and I worked on that together back in 2018-19 to win that bid and bring it to Calgary. So these are things that I'm very proud of, but none of them made me richer necessarily, or other than, knowing that I had a positive impact on people, around me and my community and beyond that. So that's kind of where my head sits on this at this stage in life, George. It's not about buying the biggest mansion or having the biggest boat. It's really about those things that resonate with me.
Isn't it incredible how perspective changes over time, and the things that we value tend to change? The things that we didn't value before now are very important, and vice versa. And you mentioned COVID along the way there. And I remember those years, very challenging, and surprisingly how we came through it, and with resilience, and we succeeded, and we prevailed, and businesses went through it creatively. And without knowing it, we were creating a new norm, as they call it. But if you think about it, the impact of the pandemic was such that in my head, this must have been a God message to say, wake up, guys. You have come a long way. You have developed beautiful technologies, and you're not utilizing them. You're still working in the 19th century. You have technology to truly be global, to truly be virtual, to multiply yourself, to increase your productivity and creativity. And I'm going to send you something to wake you up. Would you agree with that?
That's an interesting perspective on it. Absolutely, George. And I think there's lots of ways to look at what we went through with COVID as either waking us up or whatever you want to call it. And I do agree. I mean, obviously it was a horrific time for so many people who have loved ones they lost or were very, very sick. I mean, nobody wishes that on anybody. But I think we've learned a lot through it. I hope we have. I'm sure we haven't learned everything we're supposed to learn, but we've learned some things. And I mean, the fact that we're able to even do what we're doing here right now, and you and I can see each other, even though they won't know on the podcast, but the fact that we can have a video discussion like this, and it feels like you're sitting in my office, like it's remarkable. I remember prior to COVID trying to do a video call back then. It was terrible. If you had more than one person, it would chop and it wouldn't work. And it was crazy, and that's only one example of some of the other advancements, of course, that have happened as a result of COVID. But, I think these things do happen for a reason. And I think they hopefully, shake us a little bit, don't make us too comfortable. But also, the other side of that is, look what it's done for people all over the world that are in developing countries, and the ability they have now to access people around the world. Like just they can connect people that maybe you're sitting in Brazilian people who maybe struggled to connect with companies in the US. Now it's so much easier. So these sorts of things just allow for more global interchange, interaction, and ability to do business. So it probably woke us up. The younger generation has a massive opportunity ahead of them. That's all I can say.
That's for sure. Yeah. And the technology was there, and the technology took off and evolved so rapidly. This morning, I had a meeting with people from different countries. Not everybody is fluent in English. So thanks to AI, we can run a live Teams meeting in one language, and people can choose to listen in their ears in a different language, and they can speak the language. And the AI not only will interpret and translate for the others, but it will also clone their voices. So it's like speaking to them in the language that they don't speak. So the technology has developed so quickly that now we have no excuses.
100%, George. I fully agree. But you and I are internationalists. What I find so fascinating is, as we talk to various companies, the Rainmaker team, I get pulled into a few things. It's like, even with all this technology and all this capability to interact, there still is that human sort of reluctant for change. And so you still have to go through a change mechanism to start to do more business internationally. And of course, you got to build it on trust, as I said earlier, but just that ability to shift and to accept technological advancement and then to leverage it. Like you're talking about AI, and AI is fascinating. The capability it brings to accelerating exchanges between business people is incredible. It really is. So there's ways that all of these tools become so effective for business growth, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity.
You're absolutely right. Hey, Clark, this has been a very inspirational conversation, and we talked about leadership innovation and the power of connecting purpose with performance, right? Leadership, we talked about sales. Before we go, let me allow our listeners to get to know Clark Grue a little better at a personal level. So, Clark, let's see, between coffee and tea, what's your preference?
Oh, coffee. I'm a coffee guy. Even though I work for the British government, I can handle a little bit of tea, but I'm a coffee guy. Absolutely.
Tim Hortons or Starbucks?
Starbucks, yeah.
Starbucks all the way. You fell for marketing. Speaking of liquids, I'm from Chile, a wine country. Red or white?
I'm probably white, George.
White.
I know. I had
even with red meat.
I had a bad experience with red wine in China. That is a whole nother podcast. But anyway, I would say white, absolutely.
And when you travel as much as I do. I'm on the road all the time, as you said. I'm in Brazil right now recording the session. But when you travel, aisle or window seat?
Depends how long the flight is.
Depending on how long it is, right?
If I'm going to tuck in and get some sleep, I want the window. But if it's a bit shorter and I want to get out of the plane faster, it's the aisle.
The aisle.
Yeah.
And let's talk about vacation. You have a wonderful scenery there in Alberta, of course, with the lakes, with the beautiful mountains, but no beach. So let's say a beach or the mountains or countryside.
Well, I think definitely a beach. When you live landlocked, any chance to get to the ocean, I think, is pretty special. So when Cheryl and I travel, we're typically going to places like Mexico down the East Coast, of course, Playa and all that sort of thing, or Canary Islands, places like that have a beautiful beach. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same. In Texas, we don't have nice beaches, but we always say in Houston, Cancun is our beach. So it's only a stone throw away, and we can just hop over and get to Cancun in no time. And so gotta love it. Hey, Clark, as I said, it's been a pleasure. Hopefully you enjoyed the time, the conversation. We learned a lot, and I wanted to thank you for spending time with us today. It's been remarkable. It's been great to. You brought back so many memories from my years in my proud country, Canada, and I learned so much from you. I never told you this in private, and now is the best time, I guess. I've learned so much from you, watching you lead, watching you inspire people. You've always been a role model. You never turned me down when I said, "Hey, Clark, let's go grab coffee," and you were always available and always made time. And with this podcast invitation, you didn't hesitate. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. It's a pleasure to see you again, my friend. It's been too many years. Once again, it's great to see you. Great to hear you're doing well. Your family's doing well. I think any chance you get like that to connect with people is always. I get a lot out of this too, George. I got a lot out of the conversation with you here today, and hopefully some of the things we talked about are valuable to your audience, and maybe a nugget here or there, and you can take and build from. I hope that's what you got. So thanks again, George. Thanks for your leadership in this space, in the space of sales leadership, and what you're doing with this podcast. Keep it up, and we'll talk to you again sometime.
Thank you so much. Good to see you again. Take care, my friend.
Take care, George.
And that's a wrap. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode of Leading Sales. Please make sure to subscribe to our podcast in your favorite platform. And don't forget to visit our page, leadingsales-podcast.com, for more resources on the art, science, and the dynamics between leadership and sales. Until our next episode.